Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by Bet Online. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, having spent time with the Bucks, Suns, and Knicks. And I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner, who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. And we're also joined by 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael World B. Freer, who is a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 7, the Jaylen Brown episode, as Brown just recently became the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. World B is usually our numbers guy here, but Bruce, you've got something on this one, don't you?
Well, Jaylen Brown wears number 7, as Ross just pointed out. Previously, there was another Celtic a number of years ago with the last name Brown that also wore number 7. That would be D. Brown. So the Celtics are really into recycling. They're allowing their fans to reuse jerseys a couple generations later, as they did with Antoine Walker's number 8 when Kemba Walker came to Boston and wore number 8. So they may have sacrificed a little bit in jersey sales, but they've done their part to save the planet.
I love it. That's a nice little tidbit there, Bruce. Well done. Well, before we get any further into tonight's NBA Finals preview show, just a quick reminder: BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use our promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And tonight we're going to start right here with the NBA Finals matchup. It has been determined now. It's going to be the Dallas Mavericks facing off against the Boston Celtics. So let's go ahead and get right into our opening thoughts. Bruce?
There's been a long layoff for both teams, and I believe that it benefits Boston for 2 reasons. Number one, gives Kristaps Porzingis and 37-year-old Al Horford more time to rest and recover. Number 2, it taps the brakes on all that Dallas momentum after their march through the West. After playing every other day and just crushing it, now they've had to sit down, and I think that their momentum will take a hit as a result of that layoff. There's also a lot of love out there for Dallas, and they've had a great 3 months. They've gone 36-14 between regular season and playoffs since February 5th. But during that same calendar period, Boston has gone 39-8, and they finished 14 games ahead of the Mavs during the regular season. So Boston has had an easier playoff run, but when you finish with the top overall record, that's part of the reward for regular season excellence. As for the injuries on the teams they faced, it's true. But Boston's starting center, Porzingis, missed the last 5 weeks, and the Celtics have gone 9-1. So, there's that.
Yeah, no, they are still rolling here in the playoffs, and certainly it's going to be fun watching one of the hottest teams out west in the Dallas Mavericks. More on that from me in a second. Go up against the regular season champs in the Boston Celtics. World B, what are your initial thoughts seeing this matchup for this year's finals?
Well, I'm really interested in it. You got 2 really good markets, really nice size markets. You got 2 teams that you have the best team in the league in Boston. That's the only team that won 60 plus games in the regular season, and against the Mavericks, who were the best team the last quarter of the season. Going 16-4 in the last 20, and they threw away the last 2 games because they didn't need them. So they really could have been even better. But this is going to be an interesting matchup, and we're going to get into it. But this is going to be the best team each other opponent, best opponent each team has faced throughout this playoffs, without question. So, while we know it's Boston is Dallas's best opponent, Boston, Dallas is also represents the Boston Celtics best opponent in this postseason. So it's going to be there are some interesting angles from that as well.
Most certainly is. And for me, I think the fact that I saw when I was reading up here, prepping for tonight's show, that really intrigued me heading into this series is the Dallas Mavericks are the first team since the 2010 Lakers to beat 3 50-plus win teams on their way to the finals. So my question is, can they finish this out and beat the 4th team with a 50-plus win record? And not just the 4th, but this would be the best team in the NBA this past regular season. So should be a lot of fun. I mean, all the momentum right now is with Dallas, but with this layoff, as you alluded to, Bruce, that certainly could play a factor as well. So let's get right into things here and kind of break this up into different segments. So let's start with the backcourts here. I mean, looking at this on this team, we have on Boston, we have the all defensive backcourt versus Dallas's all offensive backcourt. So World B, I'll start with you because I know you're a huge fan of the all offensive backcourt in Dallas. What do you think of the backcourts in this series?
It's, you said it best. It's going to be the defense against the offense. Can Boston slow down both Luka and Kyrie? And that's the trick. You can, maybe you can slow one of them down. There's ways to get around it, but can you slow them both down? And stopping Luka seems to be the number one goal throughout this, or storyline throughout this whole finals on either side. It's Luka is such a dynamic player. He's not just this great scorer, as we know, but he's an amazing passer. And he has 50 assists in the playoffs on dunks for the Mavericks, and he has 49 assists on three-pointers. And both are the most for any player in this postseason. So the point is, he's getting the ball to these guys where it counts, in the most efficient areas. So how Boston is going to defend Luka, because there's a lot of potential options there. How they're going to, switch when the pick and roll comes, because Dallas loves to do that and get him in ISO where he's maybe the best in the league. How is Dallas or Boston going to defend that? It's really interesting. The two of them on the court in the playoffs, Dallas is outscoring opponents by over 9 points per 100 possessions, a little bit down from the regular season, but not tremendously. And, it's, as I mentioned, Luka is so great. Kyrie, when he's on the court, Dallas is 27, almost 28 points per 100 possessions better than when he is off the court. That's an amazing number. He's had that impact wherever he's been. Boston, Brooklyn, Cleveland. He's had that impact. He gets a lot of criticism and all this stuff, but he is an impactful player for his teams when he's on the court. So it's a big matchup for them. And I'm sure Bruce will figure out a way for his team to defend Luka and Kyrie, but it's a challenge.
Now, Bruce, you do have the best team in basketball for this season. That's clear. I mean, they've got the records to prove it. But I don't think you have the best player in this series. So I'm really curious to see your thoughts on the backcourts in this series and how Boston plans to face up against Luka.
I expect that Kyrie and Luka are going to get their numbers, which is basically a combined 60 points a game between them, however you want to divide it. But they're going to have to work a hell of a lot harder to get those points than they've had to up until now, for the reasons you described before. They're going up against the two best defensive guards in the league. I believe that ultimately the relentless perimeter D of Holiday and White, along with a very healthy dose of Jaylen Brown guarding Luka at times, should result in some key stops late in the game. Here's how I would describe it. It's like a boxer who doesn't try to knock out an opponent in the first or second round. They just keep pounding the ribs. And eventually the other guy drops his hands, and then you can take him out late. And that's kind of what I'm expecting. That's what Kyrie and Luka are going to face as far as the relentless defense on the perimeter. Also, too, Boston's guards aren't really relied upon to score a bunch of points. They're opportunistic, and they can be clutch. I mean, White and Holiday have combined to score 30 points a game in the postseason, which is half of the Kyrie-Luka total, but both are 40% shooters from downtown, all right? And we know that that's Boston's preferred, offense. And while Kyrie and Luka take 50% of Dallas's field goal attempts, White and Holiday take barely 25% of Boston's. So if you look at it that way, Kyrie and Luka get 60 points a game, taking half of Dallas's shots, and the Boston guards get 30 a game, taking a quarter of the shots. So from an efficiency standpoint, I think they're right there. Irving and Doncic, look, they give Dallas an edge in the backcourt. I'm not going to deny that. But when you scratch the surface a little bit, as I tried to do just now, Boston guards are much closer than many fans realize.
They definitely are. And with Dallas, this is what your defense is up against, the Wardens, as you like to call them. Dallas has ranked first in playoff points with 489, with the next closest team at 388. So a very wide margin there with the points, which primarily comes from that Dallas backcourt. Also, they're first in assists at 150. Next closest, 88 assists as a team. They're first in steals, first in three-pointers made at 57, with the next closest being 47. And they're also first in free throws made, and they've made 100 free throws in the playoffs so far. The next closest there, 53. So wide margin here with the success the Dallas backcourt has primarily had carrying this Mavericks offense. But again, they, as you've said, they have not seen a defense like Boston's with what they can throw at them with Drew Holiday, Derrick White, and even Jaylen Brown, I think, is going to play a pivotal role. Do you see, Bruce, going back to you real quickly with Jaylen Brown, do you see him opening up the game playing against Luka or Kyrie?
I think probably it would be Holiday starting off against Doncic and White starting up against Kyrie. But see, I think White is good enough to kind of hold his own with Kyrie. But I think Holiday is going to need a little bit of backup help with Luka, because with Luka, they've got to really be physical with him, and Jaylen Brown's capable of doing that. So I think it's going to kind of be a little different looks for Luka. I mean, I don't know. Mazzula's done a pretty good job with that, and they've got a pretty good defensive scheme for those guys. One of the things that the guards that Luka and Kyrie have been so great at this year is throwing those lob passes for easy dunks for the two young big guys. I don't know if it's going to be as easy for them to make those passes, because you've got 7'3" Porzingis back there, or Horford, who has great anticipation on defense. And, I just think we've seen the best of Dallas so far. I don't think they're going to play any better against Boston than they've already played in their previous rounds. So I have more details as we move forward, but I think they got to give Luka the 1-2 punch. I trust Derrick White with Kyrie for the most part.
Now, World, what's your thoughts on Boston's defensive assignments? Do you agree with Bruce that we might see White out of the gates, and then maybe down the stretch in crunch time, Jaylen Brown steps up and provides more of that physical defense on a guy like Luka?
Well, I think that's certainly possible. What's going to happen is Dallas is going to screen these guys all night, and it's going to be probably whoever is guarding their big to try and get that matchup for Luka and those guys. That's what they do. They try to set it up, and it's going to be a matter of who's going to switch onto Luka? How are they going to set it up? Or are they not going to switch at all? I think they probably will, and that's going to set up the interesting matchup here. Another interesting thing for me as far as Boston defensively and Dallas offensively is, can Luka get to the line and draw those fouls? We know how he likes to do his antics and we'll just call it flopping around as he loves to do. But Boston was the number one team in the regular season in opponent free throw attempt rate, which is how many free throw attempts per 100 shots you get from the field. Boston opponents were 18.9 free throws per every 100 shots they took, which was number one in the league. In the playoffs, it's gotten even better for them. They're only giving up about 14.5 free throws for every 100 field goal attempts the opponent has. That's a really low number, and that's easily number one in the playoffs. So now let's see how Dallas can they get to the line? Are they going to be able to trick the officials, or however you want to get the calls from the officials the way Luka likes to do it, and ends up on the floor? What's going to happen? And then when he doesn't get the call, is he going to complain nonstop like we've seen him do as well? And then that's going to be an interesting part of it that maybe people aren't talking about yet. It's the ability for Dallas to get to the line versus Boston's defense keeping teams from getting to the free throw line.
Yeah, no question. And when we look at the front court situation, we'll move on over to that. That could be a big advantage for Dallas that could help them get to the foul line a little bit more often and get Boston into some foul trouble. And when I look at these front courts, the way I look at this one, Bruce, it's the trade deadline front court of Gafford and PJ Washington with Lively coming in off the bench. And then for Boston, I'm going to label this one the big mystery front court, because my question to you is this: will a former Maverick suit up for Boston in this series?
Well, you're talking about Kristaps Porzingis, of course.
I am.
And I think,
yep.
I think everybody sort of expects him to play. The question's going to be, how close to his normal game is he going to be? And my feeling about it is this, okay? If he's 75%, and a little bit rusty, he can still do a couple things reasonably well. Number one, he can stand in the paint and put his hands up, okay? That doesn't require a whole lot of timing at this point. He's not going to, he'll block some shots maybe. He can do that, okay? If he needs to space the floor and live out at the three-point line, that is going to pull Lively or Gafford away from the basket, which is where they've done a lot of their best defensive work as far as guarding the paint. So they haven't had to go out, Towns was missing every shot in that last series. So I think at some point, I don't think, he really provided a lot of, worries there. And look, the thing about Porzingis that made their offense so unique for them anyway this year was, they like to play their one-on-one game. Brown does his thing, Tatum does his thing. But whenever they got Porzingis in a switch, he absolutely destroyed switches all year. I don't know if he'll be at the top of his game there, because that requires a little, less rust. But I totally expect him to play. And again, when we start talking about the benches later on, who knows? He might not start. He might come off the bench right away. I mean,
Very
and
possible.
even if he does start, that brings Horford off the bench, which makes their bench 30% better than it's been so far. So, yeah, I'm expecting Porzingis to participate and contribute. But you're right. It's really kind of a question mark how close to his, normal game he'll be able to play.
Yeah. And World B, what's your feeling on the thoughts of Porzingis returning for this big series and for these two front courts?
It can only help him. He's not going to be a liability, I don't think, for Boston anyway. 75%. If nothing else, it gives Al Horford more rest. We've seen Al's been terrific in the playoffs, and there's no reason to suspect it's going to taper off here in the finals. But, he just turned 38. He celebrated a birthday just a day or two ago. So he's going to need rest. I think it's going to be a long series. So you want to give him rest. And I think he helps him, as Bruce mentioned, he absolutely helps them defensively. And he is the answer to all the screens that are going to be set and all the switches that are going to be set, because really what Boston's probably going to do is just work, if they set a screen like Lively and Gafford, when they set the screens for Luka, Dallas is really efficient offensively as opposed to when somebody else does it. But now you can stay off of him, or you don't have to worry about Luka as much. You can fight through that. You stay with your man, as it were. And that really presents problems for Dallas, because here's the one thing too that nobody hasn't really talked about. Dallas has been excellent hitting the corner three. Derrick Jones Jr. has been great. PJ Washington, we've been talking about him throughout this, but those two have been great hitting the corner threes. And Boston has been awesome defending the corner three in this playoffs. And one of the reasons is they don't go through this mad switching everybody on defense. The guys who get picked or the guys who get screened, they work basically two guys that are working that switching, and everybody else stays with their man because they're that good defensively. And that really could ruin a lot of Dallas's offensive options.
No doubt. And I'm glad you mentioned Derrick Jones Jr. because he has been a superstar in his role throughout the playoffs. He's a guy that started 83 of the Mavericks' 99 games this regular season, and including, I guess that also includes the 17. He started all 17 of their playoff games, and with good reason. And we've seen it's quite clear he is Dallas's best perimeter defender. So he'll be a fun one to watch. He's got his hands full yet again in this series, having to face up against Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in this one. Bruce, one other thing I want to get to here. Dallas, surprisingly, and this has surprised both of us for sure, because we questioned this in their last series against the Oklahoma City Thunder and Minnesota Timberwolves, is rebounding. Dallas is first in rebounding throughout the playoffs, grabbing a total of 164 boards. The next closest team is 115. So, how do you see the Celtics kind of slowing their rebounding rate down?
Make a bunch of shots.
All right, there we go. It's that simple.
Shoot it well. That would be one thing. I mean, look, Boston was actually among the leaders, I think, in the regular season in rebound differential. I don't know what the actual raw numbers were, but they were definitely a plus rebounding team. But see, when we talk about the front court, I think Russ, you and I might disagree a little bit on how close this is. I think Boston has a wide advantage in their front court personnel. Derrick Jones Jr. has played great, no question about it. But at 6'6", he's going to be at a height disadvantage if he has to guard Tatum. He's 6'8". Mm-hmm. Tatum can take him in the post. Jaylen Brown doesn't post up a ton. He tends to try and go more downhill. But I think he'll be facing off more against Washington, and they're about the same height. So there's no real differential there. And, it's funny. Tatum has gotten so much negativity, and a lot of it has to do with, his shooting percentages down in the postseason. I think it's like 41% and 29% from downtown. But in spite of that, for a team that's gone, 12-2, he leads the team in scoring, rebounds, and assists. His motivation level should be really, really high. His defense and decision-making are vastly improved. And honestly, this is his time to win. If he doesn't win it this year, he may never win it, okay? But if he does win it this year, he might win multiple championships along the way. So I think he really kind of understands that this is his time, and he's come ready to play. His partner there, again, a lot of the national media, and it drives Celtics fans crazy. It's pretty funny. They like to try and pretend like there's this rivalry between Tatum and Brown. Like Brown got the MVP of the series and Tatum wasn't like jumping up and down, clapping his hand. Those guys have developed what I believe to be a really solid kind of co-partnership at the top of that pyramid in Boston. All right. They're 1 and 2 or 1 and 1A, whatever. As far as Brown concerned, he's been great. But here's my big concern about Jaylen Brown. You can clip this and save it. Boston does not want him on the free throw line late in the game when there's clutch free throws that need to be made. He's very, very shaky from the free throw line. 63% in the postseason. That ain't going to cut it. He in the games that they lost, the 2 games that they lost, I think, he missed his fair share of free throws. So I believe, Jones and Washington versus Tatum and Brown, that is like not even close as far as I'm concerned. So you and I will have to disagree a little bit on that one, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Derrick Jones Jr., what he really excels at is the fact he might be a little undersized, but he always gives quality shot contests, and he's one of the highest leapers in the league. He can jump out of the gym, and he uses that to his advantage defensively too. He gets his hands on a lot of balls, contesting those shots, getting off his feet in a timely manner, and really has good timing on his weak side blocks as well. So, I mean, as far as pure talent's concerned, it's not a debate at all. I'm not debating that. I just think he's going to cause a little bit more problems than most Celtics fans might imagine Derrick Jones Jr. can do, even after the success that we've seen so far during the Mavericks playoff run. So should be fun to watch that. And as far as the rivalry is concerned, I mean, to me, that's a total joke. I don't see it at all. And I think, if anything, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have both realized it doesn't matter which of us thinks each other. It doesn't matter who's better if we can't win a ring. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, if you don't win a ring and get over the hump, it won't matter anyway who's better. So we might as well win together and finally get a ring, and then maybe we can continue to have this debate. But there is no debate, and it doesn't matter who's better if you can't win a ring. I mean, in my opinion. So I think those two have teamed up and have a really nice chemistry going as far as acknowledging, there are times in games where they need to take over and kind of give it to the other guy to take care of the advantages that they have. So Really looking forward to seeing what this duo can do in their next opportunity to win a ring, which is right now. And I'm with you. I don't know if they get this chance again. There's so much talent on the rise around the league that their time could be coming to a close. Would you agree with that, World B? We got a lot of good teams coming.
I would disagree slightly about, if not now, maybe never, because I look at the East and teams may be getting better, but as long as Boston can keep these guys intact, I don't see anybody making a major threat to them in the East anytime soon. I don't know why anybody would think Tatum is upset at the attention that Jaylen Brown's getting. For one, as Bruce mentioned, Tatum hasn't. I know he's done the scoring and rebounding, whatever. His shooting's been terrible. There's just no way around it. He's not having as good a playoff run as his traditional numbers would indicate. I mean, he's just, as Bruce mentioned, he's shooting less than 30% from three. He's only shooting, he's making a quarter of his catch and shoot field goal attempts, and he's like 32% on pull-up field goal attempts. So there's nowhere where he's actually doing well. And the other thing is, why would Tatum be upset? He's about to get seriously paid in the offseason, no matter what happens here. We saw Jaylen Brown get it for his All-NBA stuff a year ago. Jason Tatum's about to get paid big time here in the offseason. So things are looking good here. He can add a title on top of everything else that's going to happen. There's no reason for him to be envious of anybody here. So I agree with Bruce, and obviously you, Ross. This is silly. These things. This is just something for people to talk about while there's time to talk. So there's just nothing. There's no real validity to any of it. It's just silliness, and we've seen it all before. And radio shock jock fodder, for whatever you want to call it. It's silliness.
Can I ask you guys a question about the Dallas centers, since we're still in the front court discussion here? I mean, Derek Lively, rookie. Daniel Gafford, not a rookie, but not a ton of postseason experience prior to this year. They have been great rim protectors. That's been their greatest contribution, in my opinion. That and, converting alley-oop passes and not turning the ball over too much on those dribble handoffs. But do you guys feel that their rim protection is going to be less of a factor against Boston because they live at the three-point line so much and they're not really subject to getting those shots blocked? I mean, if they're hitting their threes, they're going to win. If they're not hitting them, they're going to struggle. But Gafford and Lively, it seems to me, guys, will have far less of an impact on Boston's shooters than they might have had against a team that likes to get closer to the hoop. What do you guys think about that?
I think the biggest thing with their shot blocking ability is if Dallas is capable of keeping Tatum and Jaylen Brown secured on the outside, it's going to force the hand of Derek White and Drew Holiday to get to the rim, create some more baskets. We saw Drew Holiday get ultra aggressive earlier on in that Pacers series, and both Holiday and White are guys that primarily play below the rim, especially at this stage of Holiday's career. So they could play a factor there as far as disrupting shots for those guards. But it's going to come down to the Dallas perimeter guys being able to keep the ball out of the hands of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in their spots. Will be.
I'll say this, as Bruce mentioned, Boston led the NBA in the regular season in percentage of their shots coming from three-point range, about over 47%. In the playoffs, they're number one in that same category, a little over 47% again. So we know what Boston does. They're just really good at it, and they make their shots from the perimeter. The one thing I will say is Jaylen Brown shooting about, I think, 65% in the paint, which is where we're used to seeing him in seasons past, dominate in the paint. If he's going to can he get in there and shoot like he did during the first three rounds of the playoffs again with these guys in the middle defending? I don't know if he's going to take as many shots in there, but if he does, that's something to think about there. But I agree with Bruce as far as their impact not as tremendous because of Boston's perimeter offense.
I think a lot of that, too, is going to depend, World B, on – I mean, we know that Al Horford likes to shoot threes. We know that Porzingis is capable of shooting threes. So the Dallas Bigs are going to have to come out there a little bit. So that should get them out of the paint, at least on a number of occasions. So I guess, if Horford hits his first one or two, if Porzingis hits his first one or two, and Gafford and Lively have to come out, then that certainly opens a path for guys like Brown and the guards to find their way to the hoop. So really, this is what happens with a team that has 5 scorers on the floor. What are you gonna give up?
Yeah, great point. So should be fun to watch that. The only thing they have going for them in Dallas is the fact that they've gone against teams that have similar capable bigs. Karl-Anthony Towns can shoot it. Chet Holmgren is obviously a threat from the outside. So they do have some prior experience this playoffs having to deal with some of those talented bigs.
Oh, agreed.
And as we get to our second half here, let's go ahead and take a look at the benches of both teams. And Bruce, I think we're going to be able to agree on this one. I think Boston's bench is just much better, especially more reliable and knowing what their job is when they come into the game for short spurts. But let me get your thoughts. Do you like Dallas's bench or your Celtics bench?
Believe it or not, I kind of find the benches to be relatively close. I mean, I don't think either team has a huge advantage. I mean, look, Boston's bench, as I said earlier, is going to be bolstered by the return of Porzingis. If he's starting, Horford comes off the bench. That's a better player coming off the bench than Dallas has, that's for sure. And if they decide to ease Porzingis back in and start Horford, then KP comes off the bench again. He's going to come in against, either tired starters or play against second stringers for Dallas. He should be able to do pretty well against that. If it is Porzingis off the bench, that gives Mazzula 2 7-footers, provided that Luke Cornett is healthy. And then you've got Peyton Pritchard, who I like to call a poor man's TJ McConnell. He's shooting 45% from downtown in the playoffs. I mean, pretty good. Sam Hauser's been a huge disappointment. He's in a slump. He's shooting like 33% from downtown. And I think the Mavs bench should be better than, considerably better because, Maxi Kleber's come back now. And I mean, he was out for a little bit. He's back. He's a 6'10" guy who can, do a good job grinding bigs. And again, Lively or Gafford, whoever comes off the bench, gives them a solid big off the bench. But see, I think at this point of the season, the benches are going to be less impactful unless foul trouble forces either coach's hand. Both Mazzula and Kids are going to tighten up their rotations, and the onus is going to be on the starters. I mean, simple as that. I see the benches as relative wash.
Wow, I'm surprised to hear you say that since you've called Al Horford your 6th starter all season long. And I would agree with that because he certainly is one, but surprised to get that take. Will B, what's your thoughts on the benches?
I think on the surface, you'd have to give the edge to Boston. Their bench play they've been the best shooting team among the benches in the playoffs, about almost 58% effective field goal percentage. They're outscoring opponents. They're benched by a combined net of 4.2 points per 100 possessions. That's among the best. I think Orlando was better in their first round. But, Dallas – the problem when you think about Dallas's bench, Lively's going to be the guy who's coming off the bench. Gafford started every game in the playoffs, so it's going to be Lively coming off the bench. And when he comes in the big game with the other 4 starters, minus Gafford for Dallas, they outscore opponents by about 13 points per 100 possessions. So he has a major impact on the outcome of games, or when he's on with those guys. And it's been a number of minutes. He played, I think, 127 minutes combined in the playoffs with that group. So he can be a difference maker. But the thing with Dallas, I agree with Bruce, Kleber coming back is a big help for them because they don't have much after Lively. Tim Hardaway's minutes have been cut in half. He's been struggling huge, reverting back to his Knick days, and unfortunately for him, it's been really rough. And Josh Green has been okay. He hasn't shot the ball great. Jaden Hardy, has been a decent player for them. He just doesn't get a whole lot of minutes because, as Bruce mentioned, the benches tighten up, so they only go 7 or 8 deep. Dallas does. Same thing with Boston, really. But so if he gets in the game, gets more than 7 minutes, whatever, he has an opportunity to be impactful from the perimeter because he's shooting about 40. I want to say over 40% from 3-point range in the playoffs. So he's got an opportunity to be an impact player, but it's tough in the finals to suddenly go from 7 minutes a game to 13 minutes a game or something. But they're certainly not giving the minutes to Tim Hardaway these days. So they got to come from somewhere. I think Boston has the edge. I don't think it's as definitive though as others may think. I don't think it's a wash as Bruce said, but I lean towards more what Bruce was saying because Lively has to be a major factor in this series for Dallas to have a shot.
No, Roby, I'm glad you mentioned Jaden Hardy because I think he is one of the more under the radar guys that has certainly had his stock soar throughout the playoffs. I mean, this guy is absolutely kind of developing into what Boston knew as Terry Rozier. I think we're seeing the early stages of a guy that could be a Rozier type player in this league. And certainly a guy, if he was on a younger, more established team getting more minutes, he could certainly, put up some bigger numbers, but he has really provided a spark off that Maverick bench. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what he can do on the brightest stage here in the NBA Finals.
I hope he gets some time. I mean, I hope he gets some more.
I think he will.
Because I think he didn't see. He got about 10 minutes a game in the conference final, which is it's getting better. You're right. It is getting more, and he shot the ball tremendous in the conference finals against Minnesota. So yeah, he can be a difference maker if he continues the way he's playing. I agree.
Yep. Now, as we shift gears here to the coaches, this is also an interesting matchup per se, and we've got a second-year head coach and Joe Mazzula going up against Hall of Fame point guard Jason Kidd. Bruce, what do you think of the coaching battle we'll have going on with the X's and O's?
I think Jason Kidd has done a great job this season. He smoothly integrated Washington and Gafford into the mix after they were acquired during the season. Kyrie Irving has not been the diva that we've seen in the past, and that's a direct result of his respect for Jason Kidd. Okay. And I think you also got to give Kidd some credit for the development of Lively, all right, and the way he's utilized him. So it's his 8th season as a head coach after a Hall of Fame playing career. He was an assistant coach for a couple of years in the middle of his head coaching careers. He appeared in the NBA Finals 3 times, won a chip in 2011 with the Mavs, and his career playoff record as a coach is 30-29. So he's coached 59 playoff games. Mazzula is still the youngest coach in the NBA at the age of 35. Now, Utah's Will Hardy is also 35, but is 5 months older than Mazzula. So Mazzula is still technically the youngest coach. He's averaged more than 60 wins in his 2 seasons. His growth this season has been impressive, I believe. He's had solid assistant coaches like Sam Cassell and Charles Lee by his side. He's done a much better job managing games, and he seems to have the respect of his players. He's done, in his first year, his timeout calling was definitely erratic, and a lot of people felt he didn't help his team. This year, he's been very decisive when he wants a timeout, running out on the court to make sure he gets it. He was 15 years old when Kidd coached his first NBA game. Now, Mazzula's playoff record, again, I said Kidd has coached 59 playoff games. He's 30-29. Mazzula's coached 34 playoff games. He's 23-11. However, based on experience, you got to give Kidd the edge here.
All right. Let me lay it out to you like this. Are you giving the nod to a Mountaineer or a Mav?
Well, gee, I don't know. I'll have to think about it for a second.
Oh, there we go. Nice. Little
West Virginia. Give me a minute here to think about it. I mean, it's really hard. I'd rather eat a bug than go against a Mountaineer. So I think Joe Mazzula's done a great job in 2 seasons. He's just not going to get his due. He's in a spot where he's winning the championships. He's not going to get his due. He hasn't gotten the respect across the league at all since he's been the head coach. It's always what he hasn't done. They didn't get to the finals last year. He didn't do this with the timeout. He's not handling the game right. Now he's having a much better time. The Celtics won 60-plus games, and they're supposed to do it because they have the most talent, because nothing's going to be he's not going to get his due no matter what he does. The only way he's going to be mentioned is if they don't win and it all falls on him. There were a lot of people that wanted his job after his rookie season when he didn't get to the finals with all this talent they have. Now he gets to the finals, and if he don't win it, it's a reflection of him. So there's just no way he's going to get his due, which is disappointing because, as Bruce mentioned, all he's done is won 60-plus games. And as for Jason Kidd, he's getting this would really be a top, because there's another guy that people just do not respect as a coach, or they hadn't for the longest time until he's in this spot. He's been a winner at certain levels, but at certain stops, but he just hadn't had a reputation of being a really good coach, and that seems to be changing now. Boy, it helps when you get two of the best 10 players in the league on your roster too, I'd say. But he has a chance to do something really rare in the NBA, and that's win a title as a player and coach. I think it's he'd be 15 now to do it as a head coach and a player. I think there's been 14 before him. So there's something he could have on his mantle and resume, and maybe one day get in the Hall of Fame as a head coach too. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
To your point, World B, about how Mazzula is sort of under-respected, if that's even a word.
Disrespected,
but still early in his career. I remember a very similar situation taking place with Erik Spoelstra when he was a young coach with Miami. I mean, I remember, it was like, oh, he's Pat Riley's boy. That's the only reason he's there. And, when LeBron came over, he tried to get him fired. And Riley said, no, he's the coach. And I think Brad Stevens has Mazzula's back the way Pat Riley had, Erik Spoelstra's back. So Spoelstra was a young coach. He came out of the video coordinator office that Russ Geiger was in for a while. Okay. Yeah. So he had to really earn his respect over a period of time. And I think Mazzula finds himself in a similar situation. And if he's able to do anything close to what Spoelstra's done, eventually he will get his flowers.
Yeah, I think Joe Maz has the advantage in this one, just having been to a finals. He's got a more experienced team. These guys know what they're up against, the expectations and the pressure that comes along with a finals appearance. Luka, Jason Kidd, and those guys have not been there yet. As good as they've been. I mean, Kyrie is really the only guy that's been in this particular situation before. So Jason Kidd has a lot of things that he has to navigate as far as his leadership abilities on the sidelines are concerned. So should be a fun coaching battle throughout, and I'm sure the media out there will certainly break down all of the should have beens and what could have beens with coaching.
Hey, who let the dogs out?
Yeah.
Probably
that
me.
Would be my,
probably me there. But I mean, look at real quick. Think about, to your point, think about the way Boston has gone through this playoffs. They had the number one. They were the number one team in net efficiency in the regular season, easily. They were the number one in net efficiency. That's how many points you're better than per 100 possessions. They were number one after the first round. They were the number one team in the conference semis. They were the number one team in the conference finals. They just dominate whoever they go up against. And what do we hear? We hear that Boston's had the easiest path to the finals of anybody because of all the injuries to their opponents, throughout the playoffs. It's just, even a title is, maybe if they sweep the series, it will get some due, but it's going to be, he's just not going to get his due. And it's unfortunate to me. It's until like Bruce says, you go through the years, go through 10 years in the league, get a couple of titles under your belt, start, have roster changeover and see if you can still win. It's just the only way it's going to happen. He came into the league really at the last. By the way, he bailed his team out when the disaster of a coaching situation that Boston had before the season last year. He came in and settled everything really well. And, I'll wait and see for him to get his due.
Yeah, I think a title would help him tremendously.
Yes.
Now, as we get to yeah. All right, now as we get into Ross's bet of the night, we're going to focus here on the NBA Finals. I actually have two of them for you all. The first one is Luka Doncic to have the most total made threes in the series. That is at plus 100, so you can go ahead and double up your money. Now, Boston shoots a ton of threes, but can any one Celtic outdo Luka? I'll take my bet against that happening. I think Luka's just going to have the volume there. Boston likes to move the ball. They have tremendous ball movement, get a lot of different shooters involved. I see Luka cashing in on the threes there at plus 100. Now, the second one is an interesting one. Jaylen Brown, plus 600 to win Finals MVP. And we all know if Boston prevails as this year's champ, he's going to play a major factor on both ends of the court in this series. And he just won Eastern Conference Finals MVP award, as I teased at the top there. So at plus 600, I've got to run with the value. My bet is already placed on that just because I think it's going to come down to key defensive stops for Boston against this Mavericks defense. And I think Jaylen Brown's going to have a lot to do with that. So plus 600, Jaylen Brown to win Finals MVP. I've got it locked in. And those are my bets of the night. Now, as we get to our NBA Finals predictions here heading into the series, Bruce, I'll go ahead and start with you. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you think this might end up.
Luka Doncic whines all the time about calls he doesn't get. Boston fans hope that his whining will mostly be ignored by the officials because he's going to be facing some really physical defenders in Holiday and Brown, okay? So I think there's the potential. If he doesn't get whistles, he could end up losing his cool a little bit. That will not be good news for Dallas. My official prediction, Boston in 6 games, but honestly, I will not be surprised if the Celtics win it in 5.
Wow. All right. Will be?
You know, it's an interesting thing when you talk about Dallas. They're going up against this great defensive team in the Celtics, but they've already beaten two top 5 defenses during this playoff run. They beat Oklahoma City, which was number 4 in defensive efficiency in the regular season, and they just manhandled Minnesota, which was number 1 in defensive efficiency during the regular season. I bragged about it throughout this playoffs, and Dallas went ahead and gave them a big old poop sandwich to eat for this conference finals. They just scored at will, it seemed like, when they wanted to. So I don't think Boston's defense is going to be – they've been in this situation, Dallas has, before, and come away obviously well off. That being said, Boston's been the most dominant team during the regular season. They've been the most dominant team during the playoffs. I don't see why it should be any different, although I do think we're going to get a full 7 games, because I think going to Dallas, is going to be something that Boston is not seen and not used to. A team this talented in the playoffs going to the opposing arenas. So I think Boston wins the 7th game in Boston, and let's see what happens.
All right, and I'll keep mine short and sweet here. I echo that thought, World B. I've got Boston in 7, but I'm also going to go a little bit further with my prediction. I predict that Boston's going to win in 7, and that Bruce is going to have an updated hat on this podcast by July. July 1 is where I'm putting it on for him to have a new hat. So that it's going to be a new Boston championship hat for Bruce. And the Celtics are going to walk away as the 2024 NBA champions. But for now, that will do it for this. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to be at game 2, okay? My two sons are coming up from New York, and it's going to be kind of an early Father's Day celebration with me a week early. So on Sunday night, I'll be at game 2. So when we do this podcast again on Monday, I'll be able to share a little bit of the flavor that I tasted at the TD Garden on Sunday. All
right. Well, thanks for the reminder. I got to send a Luka jersey to your son to hopefully, wear to the game. But with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everybody.